And now we are joined by the man who just got an incredible win over Frankie Edgar in the co-main event of his last fight. It is the Sandman himself. It is Cory Sandhagen. Hi, Cory. How you been, man? Must be on cloud nine.
Yeah, I've been good. How about you?
I've been pretty good. You're in Miami, as I understand it.
Yep, in Miami. We've been here since Monday. I got back from Vegas on Sunday. We left early Monday. Me and a guy, a teammate of mine, Muhammad Naimov, who's fighting tonight for the Titan FC belt.
Right on. Okay, well, let's talk about your fight here if we can for just a second. How far in advance did you plan to do what you did? To what extent was that improv? To what extent was it strategic? Walk me through how we got to that point.
I mean, I think anytime you're fighting a wrestler, it's wise to just fling a bunch of stuff up the middle, especially if you're as tall as I am. So, I mean, I think that was kind of really no surprise as to, what I've done in the past. It's kind of just been, I mean, nothing has really landed like that in the past. But, I mean, you watch most of my fights coming up. I mean, anytime someone, starts to close in range or whatever, I start to fling stuff up the middle. And if it lands, great. If it doesn't land, it makes them think about stepping into my space. And yeah, so, I had never, it was definitely something that I do, but it was definitely the hardest, that it's ever landed.
Yeah, that is I mean, I was about to say, have you landed something similar like that before in other fights?
No. I've hit people, like with just stuff up the middle, but no, never like that, and even I had never knocked anyone out like that. Like it's still a little bit unbelievable to me. But even in the training room, man, like I try not to be too much of a jerk and get too competitive. So, even in the training room, like when I would show something like that, it's never with like some intention behind it. So, but that's the nice part about fighting in the cage is you don't have to hold anything back either, which is also one of my favorite parts because you get to see if like the stuff like that is actually going to work, and apparently it actually works.
Yeah, it works to a tremendous effect. So he goes down. What's going through your mind?
I saw him get stiff, and I kind of gave a glance back, and I was like, "Oh man, he's out." He's out, and I didn't really feel like I needed to punch him anymore. Obviously, I didn't. It was just I don't know. It was a cool walk off. It was a cool walk off.
Yeah,
I
very,
don't know.
very Mark Hunt-esque of you.
I felt like a badass doing that. More of a badass than I think I actually am. But yeah, that was a cool one for sure.
When it made contact, could you like? I talked to a lot of fighters who, when they land like a famous knockout blow, they always say like they barely felt it. Was it so clean that you barely felt it, or could you like how much could you tell when it landed? Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah. I couldn't feel it. I don't really feel anything when I'm fighting. As far as like physically, I do have a big bruise on my knee where it landed, and I remember the noise that it made. Like I remember that specifically, where it made a noise where I was like, "Yikes!"
Yes.
Like,
I mean, no, I don't know, but yes, I can imagine a train hitting a bug and being alarmed at the sound. It's
well,
something
it's
like
funny.
that.
It's funny too because afterwards, there's no audience. So like, I had my little celebration or whatever, did my roaring. And then after that, when I was kind of walking around and I had calmed myself down, he was still down and I was still walking around the cage and it was just dead silent, man. And I was like, oh man, I might have really hurt that guy.
It's a good point you bring up. I've been, and this may make me weird. If it does, it's okay. But I've been of the variety that I've not necessarily missed the fans that much in MMA. Now, I think in boxing, for some reason, it works a little bit better there. Certainly in a huge arena or a stadium, it doesn't work at all without the fans. So it's not like a one-to-one thing. But in general, I just being able to hear more of the fight and what the corners are saying, to me, it's much more interesting. Your case is interesting, though, because I feel like there would have been a huge roar had that happen. Did you contemplate at all how much different or better it might have been had the fans been there?
No, I'm happy, man. I'm happy. I don't, that didn't really cross my mind. I'm happy.
All right. What'd your coaches say? I mean, on the one hand, they probably would have wanted to see a little bit more of what you worked on. On the other hand, easy work is easy work,
Yeah, I mean that's what. So I have two corners now that I use. Carrington Banks, who's my wrestling coach, and then but also my teammate, and then Christian Allen, who's my striking coach. Banks was happy that I didn't need to show a lot of the things that me and him have been practicing in the wrestling realm. So people don't get to game plan for that stuff anymore, which I think will be good for my next fight, especially if it's for a belt. Where, we didn't have to show any of the secrets and, tricks that we were working on. So on the one hand, we were happy about that. Christian Allen was definitely really happy too. Me and Christian, we're like best friends. We've been best friends kind of since I first started. He's been my mentor, my guide, and my sensei through kind of this entire journey. And I mean, my striking is what it is because of Christian. And so I think when I win, he wins. When I lose, he definitely loses too. And so I know that the last two fights that we've had, I mean, those are both things that Christian and I go over and have worked on and talk about and stuff. And I'm at the point now in fighting, and I'm a bit experienced now, where me and him are more of a collaborative style of coach dynamic. But coming up, it was just do what Christian says, and I think I know that I'm the fighter that I am today because of that dude. So yeah, he's pumped. Everyone's pumped. I hope that I got to inspire some of the guys back home that I coach, some people on the team and stuff. So yeah, man, I'm happy about all of it.
Okay. So it raises an interesting question, which is what happens next. Unfortunately, you can never focus too long on the present. And you said, if my next one's for a title, dude, how could your next fight be anything but for a title? To be quite honest with you, like, how on earth could there be any other scenario you'd be ever contemplating?
I mean, man, it's like the UFC is a business, man, and that's how they operate, and I know that, and I don't try to, not make that a thing in my head and just get myself all riled up for things not being quote unquote fair. Like I don't do that. So I don't set my hopes too high on, stuff making too much sense. But yeah, I mean, if things, I think that I've definitely, stamped my number one contender spot. I think that if it was maybe a decision and it was maybe a dragged out fight, then maybe there's something there. But it's like, man, like, you guys wanted a number one contender. Like, I think I made myself the number one contender based off of my last two fights, no doubt.
Well, you and Frankie were both talking about this before the fight, that the winner of this one should get it. I mean, if Frankie had beaten you, there's no doubt in my mind he'd be campaigning for a title shot. And honestly, if he had beaten you, he probably, deserved is a strong word, but maybe he would have deserved it. I don't think it'd be that far apart either. So, like, if they come to you and it's not a title fight, have you got a little, like, I don't know if a set of criteria is the word, but is there something that would, okay, if it can't be this, it can be that. So what would be that would get you to sign on the dotted line that would not necessarily be a title fight? Would it be a big fight at 145? Something at 125? Or what are you thinking?
It would be a huge name, and it would probably mean a new contract. It would, TJ or Garbrandt would be great. Both of those guys are super popular, and honestly, they'd probably bring more attention to me than if I were to fight Yan or Sterling. But I'm not really about the attention business. I'm about, the winning the world title business. But yeah, if they came to me with a TJ or a Garbrandt or even a huge name at 145, then, I would definitely be open to that also.
Do you have a preference between the two?
TJ, yeah, just because, he was, I think people see him as one of the best guys in the division. Even though, he's coming off a pretty serious suspension, I think people still hold him in really, really high regard. And, I would like to definitely beat someone like that.
Do you, Okay, but still, the optimal choice here would be to get the shot from the winner of Yan and Aljamain. To what extent have you given any thought to that fight? In particular, Aljamain training with Extreme Couture for this one, which I think is an interesting twist.
Yeah. I mean, they both, I think, switched camps, right?
Oh, yeah. Didn't Petr Yan go to ATT or something?
Yeah, I think he's at ATT too. I mean, I never fought from anyone from Couture, but I'm definitely good at beating up guys from ATT. I think I fought like just in the UFC. I think I fought 3 or 4 of them. But yeah, as far as that fight goes, man, I don't know. I change my mind every single time. It's the day's flavor is who I choose. So recently I've been choosing Sterling, so I guess I'll just stick with Sterling just to be consistent. I think Sterling has a different level of intensity that he walks into the cage with, and I think that he's really unorthodox. And as far as grapplers go, I think he's probably one of the best in the UFC. So that's who I got winning. But Jan's a monster too, so it's a coin toss for me. I don't know. I'm super excited to watch.
How much do you feel like, I mean, I know you're not probably paying that much attention to it, but you had the fight with Sterling. That was a big moment for whoever won it. Sterling won it, and you had to regroup a little bit. But since then, you've regrouped times 10, right? You had the Moraes win, which was pretty great. And then this one was just, next level. Do you feel like where you were before the Sterling fight or a little bit ahead in terms of like your stock in the division?
I think I'm ahead now. I think had I won that fight, I think that I learned a lesson, and it was a small lesson, but it's one of those that goes for miles. And it's just that this isn't just. I think you talked about it. It's not some artsy fartsy thing. Like what we're doing is we're going into the cage and we're trying to knock each other unconscious, and or we're trying to break each other's knee or choke each other out. Like it's a brutal thing. And I think that since the Aljamain fight, maybe because I'm so embarrassed about it, I've really, got a flame in me that has built and grown. And I think in the last 2 fights, you've seen that, I'm going out not to outpoint people, not to, make martial arts look beautiful. Like I'm trying to put those guys away, and like fighter Cory that walks into the cage wants those guys leaving in a stretcher. And that's where I am when I walk into the cage now. It's not, let me make this look nice. It's let me hurt this guy as bad as I can.
Yeah. Well, it looks nice in the process, right?
Yeah.
One sort of takes care of the other, even if there's a switch in the mentality. By the way, did you ever go back and watch the Sterling fight? It's not a very long fight, but did you go back and take a look at it at all?
Yeah, a couple times just to, see where I made mistakes, but it's hard to watch one like that, and I'm not a guy for excuses. But when you go out flat like that, you fight like shit. And that's just kind of how it is, like it's a really intense moment. And if you're kind of like, if you're not with that level of intensity, you're going to make a lot of stupid mistakes that, you usually don't make. And then that just creates a snowball effect of like, why did I just do that? Why did I just do that? And then, and then you're getting choked out on television in like a minute. And it sucks, and it makes you lose some sleep, and you either bounce back or you don't. And I bounced back.
Certainly did. Can I just bring something up with you? And I hope you understand that I'm bringing this up all in good fun, because I know that numbers are not necessarily the most representative thing, especially this one. I even say when I tell people this is not representative of the reality, you have great numbers across the board in terms of your fight metric statistics. There is one, though, that sticks out that is highly unusual for someone of your capability. And again, I think it's because of a certain way you fought. But the fight metric boys have your takedown defense at a 30% rate. Now, that's got to be a little bit unusual, only because you may get taken down, but you pop right back up. But I wonder, were you aware that it was at 30 at the present moment?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, I
Sorry, I
fight.
know it's a weird thing to bring up, but it's all your other numbers are like through the roof,
No, I see fighting as more of it's one thing. It's not we're wrestling, we're striking, we're doing jiu-jitsu. It's not that. and there's no points. So who gives a shit if they take you down? You know, like if they take me down and I pop right back up, to me, that's nothing. You know, like, you know, we have a lot of wrestling people in the sport, and they want to, you know, try to make it as comparable as they can to the wrestling world. And that's not what it is. You know, like if you take me down and you do 0 damage to me, and I get right back up in 20, 30 seconds, and there's not a lot of control time, your takedown was useless and you used a lot of energy. I mean, that's how I see wrestling. I try not to, you know, get, especially when I'm training and when I'm game planning and stuff, I don't get caught up with like, oh, they did this, this, and this, and this is really good in wrestling, so we should stay away from it. And it's like, man, if we can punch and strike each other, you know, why would I not go to certain positions in wrestling or in the fight, in these wrestling positions? So, yeah, it's just, you know, it's a little bit of a really simple way to look at it. But you know, that's what statistics kind of are, you know, like, and the rankings and just a lot of stuff, you know, there's a lot of really ambiguous numbers that, you know, don't really mean anything. So I don't really give them any value.
Yeah, fair enough. I was just sort of curious about it. It gets me back to one thing, which is the Frankie Edgar fight. Can you tell me what the game plan, at least from a general perspective, was? Had that first knee, obviously improv or not, had it not landed, what were you more or less expecting? And then what were you using to solve for that?
Yeah. Well, I was going to see how much pressure and how eager he was going to be to take me down. You know, like if you watch the Sterling fight, Sterling didn't waste any time doing anything. He just went straight to his shot. I thought Frankie would probably be the same. He threw a bunch of hooks, you know, threw a combination, 3 or 4 hooks where we were against the cage. And I was like, okay, I'll just stay covered. I won't open myself up too much just because I don't know if he's going to shoot or if he's going to stick with this or whatever. So he did that, and then I saw a little pep in his step after that. You know, I saw him get a little bit like, oh man, like Sandhagen isn't maybe as hard to get in on as I thought. And then when I saw that, I was like, ooh, he's gonna get eager again. And then that's when I jumped. But yeah, man, I mean, the game plan was to, you know, move my feet, outstrike him, and then when he tries to wrestle me, stuff his takedowns, and then get back to the striking. And if we do go to the ground, then do all of the tricks that I have on the ground now. And yeah, that was the game plan, man. It's really simple, you know. I'm not really too much of a get hung up on certain techniques or do this and that. It's just like, hey man, like, yeah, you're better at striking than everyone else, so do that. And then when they try to wrestle you, you know, like, let's make them pay for that also. And then if they do take you down, then, you know, we have good get-ups, we know how to keep ourselves safe on the ground, and then do that, and then just get back to the striking, you know.
It's interesting. That's a unique way of looking at it. I mean, I wonder what you make of, like, you know, something I've been watching is Max Holloway's kind of reminding me these days a little bit of St. Pierre. Here's what I mean. Not in the totalizing way. That would never make sense. But St. Pierre had like a really high level skill set. And in the end, towards the last chapter of his career, he had the wrestling. He would use that over basically everyone. But you would notice he would slightly tailor it for each individual outing. I'm noticing on the feet, Max is sort of doing something similar, sort of slightly tailoring it. Do you perceive yourself getting to a place where you could do that? What do you make of that, where you have this overwhelming skill set? Let me just uniquely give it a little bit of a tug and a pull in different directions, and that gets me to where I need to be. I found like these guys who are super high level, that's kind of where they end up getting ready for fights, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Even something as simple as like, hey, which way am I circling? How low am I staying in my stance? How high is my guard? Like, you know, a lot little things like that. You train 10 weeks to be able to do. But yeah, man, I would say that you hit it on the head. I think that I do my style, but I also do my style according to who I'm fighting, you know, right? Like Bruce Lee, what does he say? What is your fight style? No fight style. You know, I think that that's kind of how you have to be when you're at this really high level. And it's not about just staying super, you know, strict and straight lined on the way that you do things. It's more about like, hey, we need to do things a little bit in this way for this time. So, you know, let's do that. But, you know, now I'm fighting a bunch of guys that I think are going to take me down. I think there's a transition that happened after a Sun Sao before I fought Sterling, where it was like, oh, okay, the next guys that are in line are definitely more wrestling based guys. So let me kind of, you know, start to tailor striking and things like that towards what a wrestler is going to try to do to me too. But yeah, I think that that's kind of a huge advantage for me. Just, you know, I think I'm going to be better at striking than everyone. And when you're better at one thing more than anyone else, it's usually about keeping it in that area. And how do we do that best?
Uh, I'm sympathetic to the argument, but just let's make the case generally. Why are you a better striker than everyone else? What is it that you do that they don't?
I think defensively, I think I'm better than everyone. You know, like I can't remember too many fights where I took too much damage standing. And you know, I think that that's the most important part of striking is being able to keep yourself safe. How I do that, I think obviously me just physically being bigger and longer, it's a little bit easier. And then also I have really good footwork too, and I'm quick, which makes it even more of a hassle to get in on me. But I would say that I'm better just because defensively I'm just much better at keeping myself safe and not getting hit than everyone else. Like you look at Yan, who has really impressive, you know, power. But you also see him standing in ranges where it's like this guy's, you know, I'm not going to say easy to hit, but he's definitely way, way hittable. And when you go into a fight and you're like, oh, okay, I can hit this guy kind of whenever I want to, it makes it a little bit easier. Like if you look at me and Marlon's fight, the range that I was able to stand at, and be able to hit him in and just poke at him and just touch on him. And he really didn't get a say in it because his footwork wasn't good enough. Just goes to show that like, hey man, like you can't just cover your face like this in an MMA fight. There's not enough glove, you know, like there's kicks, there's knees, there's elbows. So you just can't do that. That's like a bit of a dead style if you ask me.
And so your idea is that the commanding of range really is the safest way, and those who can do that to fluidly create offense, and then those who can take advantage of that for defensive purposes, that's really where the true offense is. That's where the battle's really won and lost.
Yes, I would say yes.
So are you like the epitome of Christian Allen's style? I mean, here's what I mean. Imagine Francis Ngannou came through his offices. You and him are not going to be, you know, similar striking styles for a whole lot of different reasons, right? But obviously Christian Allen could make Francis a better striker than he is. What I'm asking you is like, you know, someone who's fleet of foot, in particular, someone who can make reads quickly, does that service the Christian Allen style? And I know you've developed into your own at this point. I'm talking about early stage.
Sure.
Were you like the perfect prototype for that particular style, or no?
I was. Me and him are built a lot alike. Where we both have a lot of the same athletic similarities. As in, we're fast and quick, opposed to being maybe stronger and more powerful. So we definitely have that going for us. I would say that there's also things that are true regardless of what body type you have. I think that, you know, the angle that you put your body against someone else, everyone needs to know that. I think everyone needs to know how to fight in both stances now. And I think that there's things like that where it's like, if you're not doing these certain things, then you're gonna get beat by guys that are just not maybe as good or as athletic as you know. But what makes them good is that they can do these little things that just change things greatly. You know, I think that the most important thing, or how you get best quickest, is by taking really small things, correcting them, and then they go a mile. You know, like from earlier we talked about, like that was me for my mentality. It's like, hey, go in there and try to hurt people. That goes a really long way. Same thing as like, hey, learn how to switch your stance. That goes a really long way. Learn how to hit people at, you know, when you're outside of the shoulders, and that goes a really long way. So just little things like that, I think are, and there's definitely way more examples that I can't really think of right now, but things like that, the inches that go miles, those are the important things to know.
It's curious. Just a few more questions for you. I appreciate your time, but you said something really interesting, which was you should be able to stance switch no matter what at this point in MMA. Do you mean like you should be equally good from both sides, or that you should at least have enough of another side that you can go to for various purposes if the fight calls for it?
Yeah, I think anytime you switch your stance, man, it makes the other person have to register something in their brain. And anytime you can get someone thinking in a fight, like Mike Tyson said, the whole time he was thinking, I was punching him, or whoever it is that said that. Anytime you can do that, man, like do it. And yeah, I think switching stances is one of those things where you don't have to be, phenomenal in the other stance, but especially with calf kicks, man, you got to be able to switch your stance because your leg can only take so many of those, and you need to be able to defend yourself and offensively attack if your leg gets hurt, or and then just the different targets change when you switch stance. So yeah, I think that's one of those things that you don't need to be perfect in the other stance, but you have to be able to do that, in my opinion. I mean, that's what I coach when I'm coaching guys. Like, never are we just standing in a righty stance or a lefty stance. It's both.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, just a couple of predictions from you, if we can. There's a title fight in UFC this weekend. Not your weight class, but still, would love to get your opinion on it. You got Burns and Usman, two training partners. I always say this. People call them training partners, and I don't know what the truth is. It could be one direction or the other. But you know this as well as I do, Cory, certainly a lot better than me. Just because you're training partners doesn't mean you're equals. People keep thinking that means you're equals, but not necessarily, right? So where do you come down on this matchup?
I got Usman. Usman started training on our team recently, and I've got to spend some time with him, and I've got to learn a lot about, and I don't know anything about Burns, but I got to learn a lot about his mindset and the way that his competitive mind works, and I think it's why he wins. So I mean, I have Usman in that fight. That being said, I think Gilbert's last fight was against Woodley. Yeah, he looked super impressive in that fight. And I like Woodley a lot. I'm a fan of Woodley. I don't think that he's been fighting great lately, and I think that Burns was able to really put it on him, on a Woodley that hasn't been fighting that great. So it's kind of hard to tell, how good he actually is, because I mean, when Woodley shows up, he shows up, and he really knows how to win. And I don't think that he did that great in that last fight. So Burns looked really great. So, I mean, I have Usman just because I know his competitive mind is super strong. But I have noticed, and I don't know if it's just me, but Burns does seem to be walking around, and things that I see on social media of him and on Embedded and stuff. He does seem really confident. So I don't really know what that means,
Right.
or even if that's a good thing. So, that's kind of what we got going on, I think. But yeah, I got Kamaru winning that one.
And then last but certainly not least, let's say that Dustin and Conor fight again a third time. And not only that, it's the next one. So not down the line, but their very next fight. Who wins that one?
Man, it depends, dude. So I think Conor lost that war spirit a little bit, to be honest. I think that he's comfortable in life. He's done everything that he wanted to do in the sport. He won 2 belts. He has plenty of generational money. And I think that kind of made him lose his war spirit a little. So if he gets his war spirit back, like if we get the McGregor that's throwing dollies through trucks, I think that Conor's going to win, because I always, I know that a lot of guys get a lot of heat for the way that they act, the way that they talk, because they're arrogant, this, that, blah, 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 man. Like, it's all just war, man. It's all manipulation. It's all intimidation. There's nothing, I don't think, too personal about it. And I think Conor was one of the best at that. And he became one of my favorite fighters after I discovered that, like, that's what he's doing, is he's just, playing the art of war. And recently I haven't really seen him play the art of war. He's playing the art of friendship with his opponents. And it's like, man, like, we're going in there to knock each other out, bro. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And if you walk into a fight like Conor walked into a fight against a dog like Poirier is going to beat you 10 out of 10 times.
No doubt about it. Well, looks like you're going to have 10 out of 10 wins the way you're fighting, man. Unbelievable the job against Edgar. I know you're down there cornering a teammate, so I wish you guys nothing but the best of luck with that. And I don't know what is next for you, Cory, but whatever it is, we'll be watching, and we can't wait to see it. Congratulations, man. You really have turned it on the last couple of fights, and it's a joy to watch, and wish you nothing but the best.
Cool, man. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that.